So from Zurich, the third city that we will hear from today. I'm very happy that Claudia Thiesen is here. Yes, she is there. She came just in this morning, which was really like, okay, yes, it worked. She's there. I'm happy, Claudia, that you're here to share with us, because I think you're a person who's really like, if you come to Zurich, it's very likely you will run into Claudia in one way or another, because there are so many cooperatives developments there that she has been connected with. For instance, with the Mehr Wohnen project, which is very well known. Not only that one, also Kraftwerk. If you're interested in cooperatives that are not for housing but for working together, she's there as well with Genossenschaft Gleis 70. So that's just some addresses away from Gleis 21, I guess. There you can find her. She has, together with Sabine Wolf, she works as an advisor with the firm Thiesen and Wolf, helping cooperatives to get their machine going and rolling, and to get the best out of the possible system that's there. And I think it's very good that you're the one who can help us understand the Zurich system. Claudia.
I hope so. Thank you for the invitation.
There you go.
The photo you see is from 1973. It's taken during the so-called oil shock or oil shock in Germany. I think on 3 Sundays, I don't know exactly because I was just born that year. During 3 Sundays, cars were not allowed to use the highway. And I think it's interesting that 50 years later, we still face the same problem, energy crisis. We haven't found, maybe we found solutions, but we haven't done any solutions to this problem. And right now we face a lot of other problems, especially in housing or living together. And in the next 30 to 40 minutes, I would like to try to explain why I think that housing cooperatives can be part of a solution for a more sustainable future. Yes. As you can imagine, in the city of Zurich, we focus the same problems as in other cities, the lack of affordable housing. And a lot of people would really like to live in cooperatives or in municipal projects. And when one project is finished, you can see the line. People were trying to look at one apartment that was shown then. And you see how desperate some people are to find an affordable apartment. The Swiss people are mainly tenants, believe it or not, especially in the cities or in the urban regions. And in the city of Zurich itself, 25% of all apartments belong to the city of Zurich, to public foundations or to cooperatives, which for Switzerland is a lot. You see the condominium ownership is only about 10%, and the rest is private companies, pension funds, and so on. So in 2011, the people from city who are allowed to vote, they wanted to the city to support this non-profit housing sector, and it should increase to 33%. Though in the last years it was still 25%, because a lot of cooperatives are building, the city of Zurich itself builds a lot of housing, but also the private or the private sector builds a lot. So it's stable in this 25%, and I think the city will not reach that aim. And one reason, because people, of course, want to live in corporate housing, is the difference of the rents. It's up. I think the average now is about 25 to 30%. Robert told us in Vienna it's nearly the same. And it's not because cooperatives build much cheaper. This is a bit fast. It's because there is no profit taken out of the projects, and of course, if the rates are low, the rents are low as well. For instance, especially in the cooperative housing, everyone is obliged to do this, but a lot in the private market don't do this. So the rents are rising in the private market very fast in the last years. So you were already told that housing cooperatives, they are really private co-ownerships and self-help organizations. In Switzerland, they are not really subsidized. There are financial instruments that I will show you later. But really the main subject, it's non-profit, and rents are calculated on the effective costs, which is a very important principle for us. And of course, they are favorable for the public good, as you also said, because they facilitate subsidies behalf to the public sector, of course. And they often have subsidized apartments in their projects, up to 30%, especially the younger cooperatives who have projects on a land lease by the city. And very important, one person, one vote, no matter how many money you have inside the project. So it's a quite democratic organization, a cooperative, and people are more or less involved in the strategic decisions. So we're a bit earlier than Vienna, 3 years to be precise. In 1907, there was the first non-profit housing project, which is still inhabited, and there were a lot more in the next years. I'm sorry, this is a bit behind, and I think the development was similar to many other cities in the 20s. This garden city idea spread out in Zurich. In the 40s, a lot of houses were built after World War II. In the 60s, we had the first high-rise buildings built by the city of Zurich. Also, the writer Max Frisch lived in this house. And Zurich used to be a social city. It, of course, still is. So in 1907, what started all of this is the municipal code to promote healthy and affordable housing. So that was the first sign of the city to support cooperatives. And since 1924, we have principles to support this sector. And the main thing is that the city of Zurich does not sell land like many other cities now, but not enough, I guess. And they then set the principles for a leasehold land for long term. We have instruments that they can participate in the share capital of a cooperative and support the financing of a project. And even in 1965, the directives for land prices were established, and they still are in use now. They didn't change till now. So maybe to explain this, the land value, the theoretical land value, depends on what you build on the land. So if you build subsidized apartments, it's 10% of the total costs. And this rises up to a maximum 20% of the total costs. And so the average, if you build just apartments, it's about 16%, the land value, that are included then in the rents, and where you have pay a rent for maybe 60 years or plus. So, of course, the main condition is that you have to calculate the cost rent model, and you are not allowed to make profit. So this is controlled by the city of Zurich. But they have a lot more conditions if they give land lease, especially, and these conditions were even more and more in the last years. So every time the city of Zurich is offering a new land for cooperative housing, they have invented new or more conditions. So one condition is that you have to provide 1/3 of subsidized housing, which means the rent is cheaper for people with low income. You have occupancy requirements. It says you cannot live with one person in a 4-room apartment. Every room has to be filled with a person, let's say that. You have to organize a competition together with the building department. They want to be sure that you really make good architecture, whatever that means. And you have, of course, to fulfill the highest ecological and energy standards that are, it's more than the law. In the last few lands, they also, or few processes, they also forced the cooperatives to build green facades. And you have to provide 1% of the space for social welfare at no charge. You have to invest in art. And you have to provide the ground floor uses for the public. And in the last offer, you had to say you are willing to do a very big participatory process to develop the project. So you can ask if this is really good to put all this on cooperatives, but it's like it is. And I think anyway, cooperatives have a lot of these themes in their projects, even if the land is owned by themselves. So very important is that in the tradition of non-profit housing in Switzerland, we have really established financial instruments during the years. We have this binding cost rent model, which I try a bit to explain with this graphic. On the one side you have the rent, that's the income, and that's it. And on the other side you have the costs. For operation maintenance, you have to, of course, to pay back the loans and subsidies. You have a depreciation and a renewal fund. So this is really a balanced system for renewing after 60 years a house or a building. And what's very important for the success also is the network that we have in Zurich. We have we exchange experiences, we know each other, we have an umbrella organization. So I think this also helps, or really helps the young cooperatives to establish new projects. This is a very simple graphic, how we finance projects. The tenant's equity is about more or less 10%, let's say. That's the money from the people who move in. And it's important that the banks know that this will be paid when the people move in and not before. We have a special conditions for low interest loans from the state, the so-called fonds de roulement. We have also loans from cooperatives, which are similar to banks, but who are secured by government bonds. And the main capital, it's more or less 60 to 70% is first mortgage from banks. The history went on in the 80s or in the 90s because young people then, that time, they really didn't find place to live in the city. It was even forbidden, not in the 90s, but in the years before. If you are not married, you wouldn't get an apartment. So I think the city was quite conservative in the 70s and still 80s. And so there were some big squattings in the city, which were important for the development of the new cooperatives, which in the 90s began to think about new ideas, to think about the renewal of the cooperative idea, because many old cooperatives focus really on family apartments and just housing, not developing a city or a quarter. So young people met and tried to find out how we can live differently in a city and build our projects on our own. So Kraftwerk 1 was one of the first young innovative cooperatives, and they really focused on developing the quarter, not only flats but also community space, working space, to provide space for the infrastructure of the city. They developed the projects together with all the members, up to the idea of self-managed houses. They really wanted to renew this idea of solidarity. And of course they had this ecological aims that we have to reduce our space that we use. We have to reduce our energy consumption. We don't need a car if we live in a city. And of course it should be inclusive projects. Everybody who wants should have the opportunity to take part. So the first project, some of you will know this, was finished in 2001, and it was quite recognized by a lot of cooperatives and other persons, because it was not only a housing project, but also one building with offices and shops. And this is automatically. I have to. I don't do anything. I show you one example. One idea was to create space or apartments for a lot of people to live together, to organize themselves, and they called it Suite. And they really realized, no, it's not going further. They realized these big apartments. This is just a sketch that Martin Etienne was doing when he visited the project. And as you maybe see, it's like the shared household that we know. People live together, one person, one room. They share the common space, they share the bathrooms, they share the kitchens. But still, it was new for the cooperatives to build big apartments like that. And you see a lot of different people like to live together. It had children in these apartments, elderly people. And so it was an opportunity to live together in another way than you maybe used it when you have been young and just did it because of financial reasons. So the next project that some of you probably know because you have visited it was the Mehr als Wohnen Hunziker, a cooperative where cooperatives joined together and founded a new cooperative. And this was the idea was to combine the multiple know-how that cooperatives in Zurich have for a new project and to support each other, and of course to find out what is possible if we make a bigger project. And this was also developed by a lot of people from a lot of different cooperatives who bring in their experience and discussed a lot about the program, about the aims. And I just focus on some aspects because some of you maybe get hungry now after long talks. So the competition was a bit special because it was not only an architectural competition but also an urban planning competition. So one office or two offices, they won the urban planning, and three more offices, architectural offices, they won housing projects. So the challenge was to bring together all these housing ideas into an urban planning. That has won the first prize. And then we developed this project with the principle of dialogue. We had a lot of discussions on models together with people from the city of Zurich, from the departments of building, with us, the cooperative, and the architects and planners. And the result was, in the end, these 13 houses, the Hunziker Areal project, where we could establish different kinds of typologies, like the Clusterwohnung that was that we knew from Kraftwerk 1 before. And we also tried to build a new part of the city where the spaces between the houses are very important for the people who live there and for the neighbors in the surroundings. So one principle was that we really have ground floor uses for the public or for the community and not apartments or housing, just a few of them. And yeah, I think some of you know the results. I just show some pictures. For us, it was really important to have animated ground floors. that also people have space to work there. Very important verbal reception, which you also find in projects like Kalkbreite, where people can really have a direct contact to the administration. And of course, we share a lot of things in Mehr als Wohnen. Some things for the daily business, and of course a lot of community space, different sizes, which is given to the people who live there, and they decide what is happening in these spaces and what they are doing there. So one of the principles is that we really have a lot of different typologies, which leads us to a better social mix, I think. And these special typologies, like the cluster apartments, who offer opportunities that you don't find on the private market. Yeah, I'm sorry, this is just so it's a bit difficult to. Huh? Ah, you're doing it. Okay, thank you. So she's pushing me. Okay, I just. Yeah, and one really important principle is we have to find solutions how we can involve people who are really have no chance on the housing market. So we have 20% of apartments are subsidized. 10% of all apartments are rented out to institutions who offer space for people who need support when they are living there. And so they are like, it's no segregation, it's like inclusion in the project, and they really like to live there and use this space that is provided for everybody. Okay. So a short view how we organize such a big project, because you have to imagine that 1,400 people live on the Hunziker areal. It's finished now since maybe 7 years, more or less. So the blue part you see is really the same organization that every cooperative has. You have the General Assembly, you have the Managing Board that is important for the strategy. You have often an Executive Board to manage all the work and or the administration. And then for the people you need very simple structures that they can organize. And for this big project we invented like a common commission, we call it, and they decide about the money the people have for their projects and also the usage of the space, of the common space. And if you have an idea and want to do something, you can found a so-called quarter group, Quartiergruppe, and present your idea to the common commission, and they decide if you are allowed to do this or not. And this, the principle is that it must be open for a lot of people, and that of course it must support the ideas of the project. That's it. Quite simple. And so far in the last 7 years it's now over 50 groups that do a lot of different projects from, you can see maybe there's really a big variety of what is going on there, and this is really important also for the stabilization of the neighborhood and for the social structure of this project. And of course we have to develop it further. We did a lot of good things at the Hunziker area, but of course people also criticize some, for instance, that it's too hot in summers, too much concrete, not enough green. So this is what we try to develop together with the inhabitants to improve the situation. That is one example. Yeah, and also for us it's important to involve also the younger members or the future members of our cooperative, that they understand what we are doing and that they are also a part and an important part, and we hear what their problems or wishes are. And I just show you shortly, I don't know, Ari? Yeah, okay. The last project of the cooperative Mehr als Wohnen, we could buy an area in the city Winterthur, which is 20 minutes away from Zurich. the so-called Hobelwerk. And this was used to be a development company wanted to sell it and to private investors, and we could convince them to sell it to us, to the cooperative, which is quite a challenge because 1/3 of the whole costs are now the land price. So there's not much left for the building and for the rest. And what we tried in the beginning, we tried to learn from our first project, the Hunziker Areal, what was good, what we could do better. We also tried to discuss with the architects what are the main challenges we need to deal with if we build a good project for the future. One challenge is the heat or the climate change, so we try to establish a sponge city. I don't know if I have to explain, but it's how we deal with the rainwater mainly, and other things that we try to establish to reduce the heat effect. We were thinking a lot about how we can realize net zero buildings. We are not there already, but I think we are hopefully on the way. So, and of course, we try to develop this community living together in big apartments, and try to make it more flexible and open it to more different people than before. And one important theme was that also these processes where people can participate should be with low barriers, that really a lot of different people can be engaged or can engage in this kind of projects. So to finish, I think the housing cooperatives in Zurich, if you look at it, they built really the most innovative projects in the last years. I think they are also proof that they are able to develop bigger areas, not only one building or two buildings. And we see the city as a partner, especially in case of land lease. And I think it's very important because people really are involved, and I think it's important that people learn to take responsibility for their surroundings and really have the space and the opportunities to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Claudia. Is it working? Number 3, yeah, it's working. Thanks a lot. Maybe one question. It's very clear how you indicate how the innovation is done through and also within the cooperatives. At the same time, I'm curious how your reflection is on what we heard in Munich, what we heard also from Vienna, but is also here in the Netherlands really the situation with the rising building costs, continuously rising, and now also the rent levels which are rising as well. So the interest levels. So is this also the case? Probably in Zurich. And how are the cooperatives? Well, how are they facing that challenge?
Well, I think the interest level is not the main problem because it's very low at the moment. And I remember when developing projects 15 or 20 years ago, the interest level was about 3 to 4% that we calculated, and it still was possible. So I think this is not the main problem. Even if the people, the members give money, you can pay them an interest rate, and they are willingly to keep it low because they support their own way of living with that. What is a problem, I think, is the way we build, especially, or we construct in Switzerland. We use a lot of concrete, steel, a lot of resources that we in the last years thought, well, everything is available at all time, everything is getting cheaper, and now, we discover it's like everybody, we have to really rethink about how we build, what materials do we use. Could it be easier? I mean, we have so high standards, structural standards in Switzerland, and but I think this is a process which is, yeah, we started, but it will not be so easy to receive that goal, I think.
This also has to do with the if you go to the whole area of urban renewal and densification of current cooperatives, like the project Friesenberg you showed, where old material is demolished and new. Is it a plea for reuse existing?
Yeah, I think
structure?
there is not a good. We don't have a good experience with reuse materials, and in Zurich, especially in Zurich, the money in the Immobilien sector, I don't know in English, is so much that also houses from the 80s are demolished, because if you build new, you can put new money in inside. So we have the same problem, and I think there is very slow a change in how we can. That is I don't know. It's a resource. The buildings that are already there, they are a resource, and we should use them, and we should be careful with them.
Yeah.
But
that's clear. Any questions? Yeah, short question for Claudia. Who? Annette Mathiesen.
My name is Annette Mathiesen, and I'm an urban planner of this area, and I'm interested in the cluster Wohnung. Can you explain a little bit more about this principle, and if this is really a very important issue for the cooperative housing, or is it, what the meaning of it?
Can you explain if there's a relation between your question about the cluster and your relation to this area? Is this, or is it or not? Because it assumes, because you start, okay, it's just about the cluster apartment, understanding the cluster apartment.
Okay, I think it is. I mean, we know shared apartments, as I showed you, and then we have the experience that a lot of elderly people came to us. It was in to Kraftwerk 1 and said, we want to live together in apartments, but we are older now. We don't want to share everything, so we want a bit more private space for us, that led us to this development to provide more private space, a small bathroom for 1 or 2 persons, maybe a small kitchen, but this is maybe a bit too much already, and then share the rest of the apartment together. And then maybe 8 or 10 or more people can live together, a bit more luxury than we knew it before. And I think it's an important, it should be involved in, or this should be an opportunity for projects, because it offers more possibilities how we live together. We have to leave this model of family living, or young persons live like that, elderly persons have to live like that, families have to live like that. I think we have a big diversity in society, and the apartments that we offer are not showing this diversity, or are not good for this diversity. I don't know how to explain better.
A small question here from Robert.
How did you acquire the money to buy the Hobart? You told us it was very expensive. Because we have problems in acquiring money.
We had to go, because it's always easier if you have one project that is already done and is done successfully. You have connections, you have a network, you know who you can ask. And in Switzerland there are people with a lot of money who want to give the money for good projects. So if you know them,
we'll organize a symposium and invite them all over. Okay.
And of course the banks. If you have a good relationship to 1 or 2 bigger banks, it's better they give the money to cooperatives than doing something else.
Yeah. Thank you, Claudia. Big hand for you.